Hi, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of From the Suggestion Box, navigating feedback, the good, the bad, and the say what. I'm very excited because it's my first couple interview. Yes, we have Angela and Noel Williamson, and our paths crossed in a very just perfect way. Like, I just don't believe things happen on accident or by coincidence or in a crazy way. I am just so glad that our paths have crossed, and I am going to just let you all tell the listeners a little bit about yourselves.
All right, well, thank you so much, Nicole, and I am so excited. I know we're both so excited to be with you, so thank you so much. I'm Angela Williamson. I work at the Blood Bank at Delmarva as the Volunteer and Community Relations Specialist. I've been there 2 years. I was at a museum before that doing volunteer management. I was at a garden before that, at a public garden. Originally, I hail from Nebraska, good old Cornhusker State. So that's a little bit about me.
I'm Noel Williamson. I also work at the blood bank, and I work in the component lab there. So I process the blood when it comes in and get it ready to be shipped out to hospitals. I really enjoy what I do. I've been there a little over a year. And before that, I was a middle school math teacher. So it's quite a change for me. But I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now.
Fabulous. Okay, welcome. So, Angela, we're going to dive into how you went from biology to managing volunteers, because, you know, that's a fascinating thing. We all know, like, we've all literally fallen into this. So I'm loving that. But before we get there, I'm going to hit it straight off. Let's talk about feedback. So can you all share either individually or something that you guys went through together, any type of feedback that you received? Either it was something that might have been hard to hear, but it was something that you needed to hear in order to grow, a really great piece of feedback that you had to learn to just say thank you about, or something that was just like so crazy and outrageous that it literally just makes you go, say what? So talk to me, tell me a little bit of something.
Absolutely. I had done a talk, a presentation, and when the feedback came back, which I really appreciated, there were comments from "this was the best thing ever" to "this was a kindergarten level presentation." And I was a little like, what on that one? It was such a range of comments, from like, "this was so helpful, this was incredible," to like these other ones that were like, really basic, don't need this, should have been more philosophical, whatever. And so it was really crazy for me to process, like, what did that just mean? Did they all watch the same thing? I don't know. So I was a little, it did grab my heart. You talked about that, and it did grab my heart a little. I was a little like, oh, well, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Like, I'll just leave this alone for a while. But the person that gave me the feedback that had compiled it said, you know, you do have to kind of sort through. There are comments, obviously, that would be growing points of things that I could do better. There are positives that I could take and say, okay, those were positives to build upon. But to take some of the other ones and not let it kind of stab me in the heart, you know, it was a little difficult at first, but I just had to set it aside for a little bit and then go back to it later.
I love that, especially the setting it aside, especially if you find yourself getting like emotionally attached to it. And just the whole, like, I love whoever gave you that information. They're like, take the ones that, you know, the stuff that's really good, take that and run with it. The stuff that you can grow from, grow. And then the other stuff, kind of just let it go, especially if it's not being constructive. You know, saying something like, this is kindergarten level, that's not really helping you any. And, you know, I've been on the other end of some of that feedback too. And people will say things and I'm like, but did you read the description of the workshop? It had nothing to do with what you're talking about. So they like, I got slammed for it didn't have this, this, and this. But I was like, but the title of the workshop was this. It had nothing to do with that. So how did, why are you expecting this? It's almost like we're talking about, hey, we're going to talk about growing apple trees. And they were like, there was nothing about orange juice because we're talking about apple trees.
Exactly, right.
Learning to be like, okay, that comment, I'm going to let that one just go because it wasn't even relevant. It wasn't even, but it's the place where you have to get to learn, because I wasn't always like that. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't give them orange juice. And I was like, but Nicole, you never promised orange juice.
That wasn't supposed to be.
Right. Okay, I love it. That is beautiful right off the bat. Noel, do you have one?
I guess when I think of feedback, I think of when we get a review with our job, like a yearly review. And I remember one time I was working at a hotel at the front desk, and I really like helping people. And so I remember when I got a review one year for that position, the supervisor told me that I'm a very reliable, very dependable employee. But I need to show more empathy towards the guests when they have a complaint. And so I just felt like that was really an opportunity for me to learn to show empathy and show compassion to the guests there from the guest's point of view, not from the hotel's point of view. So I really learned a lot from working there and from that feedback I received from her.
Okay, I like that. I like that very much. Noel, this question is for you. You are a ministry leader, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Has there ever been a topic where it just kind of didn't go over very well, or just even in asking the guys, how is this weekly study going? Is it working for you? Is it not? And the feedback that they've given to you, have you ever gotten anything that just made you go, let me get back on my knees and ask the Lord if I really heard from him? Is this what I'm really supposed to be doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to be careful how I answer that, because what we talk about in our group, we try to keep, on a personal level and keep within the group.
Of course.
But this last topic I decided was relevant and needed to be discussed in our church, and that's race and religion. And so I felt like it was timely, and it's something that we need to discuss. And I was hoping that it would plant some seeds within the group. And that's just a prayer that I have. And I pray that what we have been talking about and going through has resonated with some of the guys and maybe changed what their thinking was before the study started.
Nice. Very, very. So has it been pretty welcomed, or did you find was it challenging for you?
Yeah, I had some challenging feedback before I even started the group, but I stuck with it, and I wanted to do it, and so I kept moving forward with what I wanted to do. Yeah, there was some tough feedback to begin with, but like I said, I think it's been worth going through this study with this group.
First of all, kudos to you, because I know there's a lot of organizations across the board who are doing the same thing. Same with volunteer programs, and a lot, like just about every institution is looking internally, how can we do better? And a lot of people are also getting like pushback with feedback. So would you mind being vulnerable and sharing without, like, I'm not trying to incriminate you, but I'm sure there's somebody else out there who probably got that same pushback and had that same type of tough situation and didn't know how to handle it. Would you mind sharing maybe what some of that feedback was before you even started and how you were able to push through it anyway?
That's a good question. Well, there's a leader in the church, one of the pastors that oversees small groups. And so I talked to him through email first, and I said, this is what I want to do as a study for the group. And he thought it was okay to do, and he says he hopes it's prosperous for the group, and so I got the approval to do it.
It's not going to be easy, but it's necessary in order for us to move forward, in order for us to grow, in order for us to become and be better. We just have to, like I attribute it to labor pains, right? Like you don't just have a kid then just pop out, unless you get like an epidural or you have a C-section or whatever. But that's besides the point. You're starting to feel those contractions, and before the birth of a child and the beautiful human being is in your arms, there's a lot of pain and hurt and just before something beautiful happens. And I feel like that is the state that we are in right now. There's a lot of contractions going on in so many organizations, and it hurts and it's uncomfortable, but the result is going to be so beautiful because of it. So Noel, thank you for that. Because a lot of times too, people are always like, well, I'm only one person, what can I do? You can affect the people who you can affect. And if one person and each person is doing their own part, collectively, we are moving and growing by leaps and bounds. So kudos. Okay, I will get off the subject because I realize I have beaten it dead. So I'm moving on. So, Angela, talking about working and managing volunteers, have you all done surveys or anything like that? And have you ever gotten any feedback in a survey that just made you want to cry? Oh, I'm sorry, that was me. That just any type of feedback that you got from surveys?
I don't know that I've wanted to cry, fortunately. I'm trying to think. So with the surveys, I've gotten some positive feedback. I've gotten some of the what? I didn't quite get that. Like, what page are we on? So it wasn't like a dig, like I don't think I've ever gotten any from a volunteer that was like, make me cry, like in the heart. It was more puzzlement, I think, or, don't know that I can do that, but I will take that under consideration. And so I guess maybe I've been fortunate, had some really, really nice volunteers that haven't gone like digging and poking too hard. And, so that's been good. But sometimes some feedback does come back and you're a little like, okay.
Just kind of like, like the little doggy when he looks at you like,
Right, that's exactly right. Like, okay, maybe not.
So let me ask you this. In terms of giving feedback, have you ever given feedback in a way that it just didn't go as you thought it was going to go? And what did you learn from it?
It's a great question. As the volunteer manager, many times, well, not many times, hopefully, but sometimes we have to let a volunteer go. And sometimes every time that's hard, actually. And so giving feedback prior to that point can be really challenging. To be able to come to a volunteer who thinks they're doing everything perfect. What's wrong with like the way I'm doing this, or why I'm showing up when I'm not supposed to, and why I'm showing up at a door that's supposed to be locked, and why am I doing like these whatever things, right? And so, having those conversations and then being like, I don't think they got it. So, that's challenging more for me. And on the other hand, they get so riled up. It's like, well, what do you mean you don't like me? And I'm here to help you, and blah, 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 blah. And so it's, that can be challenging, definitely challenging. And just trying to keep things as short. I've learned I have to keep things as short as possible, as succinct as possible. I think through it and try to make it just about that action, not about the person or personality. So this action is not acceptable, or based on what you signed in the handbook, this action is not lining up with the handbook. So that's been helpful. I know in some ways some places I've read that, you're supposed to sandwich, do a positive, a negative, and a positive. But in some cases, I don't think that works, because for some people, if they hear that, they're going to lose the negative, the quote negative or the corrective piece of it. So I think it just depends on the situation, the volunteer, the personality. Some people have personalities that are very like dun 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 dun, dun. And so that's how you have to approach them. You know, this is it, da 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 da. But some people are more fuzzy, warm, and they get offended really easily. So then having to like figure out how to gently go into that conversation, but still being short and succinct, it's really challenging. It really can be.
Yeah, I feel you. And we've had other conversations in the past where we talk about, building relationships with your team members, regardless if it's volunteers, regardless if it's employees, and regardless if it's people who attend your study group. Building that relationship always makes giving tough feedback easier. So somebody told me a while ago that it's, in general, they said it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And so how I take that to apply to this is, during the good times, that is when you really work on building the relationships with your volunteers. Like the first time that you call them shouldn't be when they've done something wrong or when it's corrective, it should be, and of course it's not easy, especially if you have a multitude of volunteers, but just having that mindset of, you don't want to come across like the principal at the principal's office. The only time you hear from you is when you've done something bad, right? Because then also that just already puts them in almost a defensive or like, what did I do, type of mode, where whereas if in the times where everything is good, you're just calling them up or you're just checking in on them. I just want to see how you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. Then when you get to that point, or if you ever get to that point, it makes that communication so much easier because they know that you are coming to them at a place of concern and a place of
your heart.
Yeah, I was gonna say love, but I'll go heart. Yeah. There, and it's not like a yeah, so that is great. So I love that you were talking about that part, because it's going to help transition into Noel's book, right? So Noel wrote a book. Where is it? I have it here. Yes, it is called Job Loss, Applesauce. I hope you guys can see it. And it's just talking about surviving losing your job. And I thought that this was so phenomenal for a couple of reasons, because I actually had written an article called Surviving Survivor's Guilt, and I wrote it because when my organization went through its first round of cuts, I made it, but I felt so terrible because I was like, why me and not my colleagues, especially because it happened right before my 8th anniversary at the organization. And I was like, I'm supposed to be celebrating, but I just, the person on the right and the person on my left are gone. Like, how do I celebrate that? And then what that did is it took me into this mad fear, shot me into fear, because it was so like out of the blue, that I wrote another article called the 3 F words, which would be fear, furlough, and faith, because I was so scared about, even though I was lucky enough to not get cut, now I'm scared every day. Is it going to be me? Is it going to be me? And then so I was getting myself all like riled up. And so when Angela, when you and I were talking and you said that Noel wrote this book, I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Especially as we're getting ready to go into the holidays, and maybe a lot of people have been in this position and they have lost their job, right? Talk about the worst feedback you could ever get. You walk into your boss's office and it's like, oh, by the way, here's a box for the way out. Like, if there's any worse feedback for that, I don't know what it is. So Noel, you want to share with us the experiences that you've had, and just really anything that you would like to encourage people with, or, walking that through, because you said that you've been, you survived losing your job 3 different times, and yet here you are looking well, you're doing good, you look happy, you don't look devastated, you're taken care of. So talk to us.
Like you said, I've been laid off from a job 3 different times in my career, and I just decided to write my story about it and try to encourage others to keep moving forward and not reflect on losing their job, but trying to make contacts and send your resumes out there, apply for as many jobs as you can. Maybe find a job coach that will help you with interview techniques. That's something that I did. Go to the library where they have a resource person there that could help you find a job or open positions. So there's a lot of different tips that I list in my book that is helpful for finding a job and what to do after you lose your job. But really the main focus of the book is the feelings that you have once you lose your job. And there's probably a lot of books out there on how to get a job and what you can do for that. But I really want to focus on the part on the emotional aspect of it and how you feel once you do lose your job. So like I had a different feeling each time I lost my job. The first time I was shocked. I did not expect it at all. And really didn't know what to do at that point. The second time I lost my job, I was pretty angry. I didn't like the fact that that was taken away from me. I felt very upset about that. And it also happened on the day of our wedding anniversary. So that really made it even more difficult for that to happen. And then the third time, I was grateful for the opportunity to work at the school and to have a chance to teach. And so each time I had different emotions that happened after I lost my job. And I just like I said, I want to encourage people to keep moving forward and keep trying.
To the person who has recently lost their job and they're going into the holidays, which is like, holidays are already hard to begin with. And then with the year that we've had, and there's people who have kids maybe, and they're going into all of this. And I feel like I'm no expert, but I feel like when you lose a job, it's almost like kind of going through stages of grief a little bit. And then, but if you are the breadwinner, like, so for me, part of where my fear was that I had to like shut that off, and I had to not allow myself to stay in fear, but to really change it to faith and just knowing that everything was going to be okay. I mean, I still struggle with it, but I'm the breadwinner, right? So I'm a single mom. So if, had that happened, what am I going to do? I'm the only one. I don't have another person to help, pick up the slack if something should happen. So for somebody who might be in that position, or maybe they're the head of the household, maybe, they have a partner and children that are relying on them. Like, how do you, because that's a very real thing, like how do you talk somebody through that and let them be okay to the point where they just don't want to go like either binge drink because they're so depressed, or just take it out on the family, like, because this is a very, very real situation. Bills are still coming in. People still, the family still has to eat, and people are looking to you almost like for the answer. Like, how do you encourage somebody through that?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly not a counselor, so I'm not someone that can do any counseling sessions with people. But I could just encourage them and tell them, what happened to me and what I did to find another job. You're obviously the person would be very skilled in what they're doing, a lot of experience. And just focus on the positives. Even though you lost your job, it's very difficult to lose your job. But I would still focus on the positive aspects of the person's skill set and what they're good at. And, it kind of relates to volunteering too. They could volunteer their time in the meantime to boost their skill set in something else that they might be interested in doing. So, this whole session that we're talking about here kind of relates to volunteering as well. So, it gives you a chance that while you're looking for a job, do some volunteer work. And see if that's something that you like to do that you haven't tried before and always wanted to do.
I like that.
Yeah.
I've trained him well, haven't I?
Very good, very good. And what I love about that is, especially because we are always looking for skills-based volunteers. We're always looking for skills-based volunteers. So if you go to an organization with the opportunity to offer that skill, and I've seen it a couple of times, even at my own organization, where volunteers ended up either getting a part-time or full-time job, or they at least had an opportunity to interview for the job, but they made connections of people who knew people and helped them that way. So volunteering and giving back is a fabulous idea. I like it. I like it.
Another thing, if I can jump in, is support. I think support is really important. I think it was, as a spouse, it was really important to be able to allow him his feelings, and be able to allow him to feel that sadness, madness, whatever, all of those things. As a partner, I felt like I was going it with him. It really is. It was, the two become one, and we're doing this together. But feeling like I still needed to be like the strong one in some ways, to be able to let him do that grief and that, go through that process, and encourage in that way. So finding, if you don't have a spouse, but finding a support system of some sort, friends, a small group, family, whomever it is that's going to be positive for you and be able to encourage you, and not be like, oh, there's 100 jobs out there, I'm sure you'll find something. There's so many things not to say to somebody who's unemployed right now. Just send that on Indeed. I'm sure, there's so many advice pieces that go to that, and to avoid those kinds of things, and just to be able to empathize and say, wow, I can't even imagine. I'm going to be thinking about you. What is your skill set? What are you looking for? Maybe I'll know somebody. And just to be able to talk and walk through that. But if you're the person that has lost the job, to really look and seek for that. Don't hide in a hole. Don't put yourself in a closet in a bad situation. Grieve and be mad and all of those things, but move forward through the pain and the frustration, and keep moving one step. I know it was a lot. How many, do you remember your numbers? How many?
Well, I applied for like over 700 jobs and had over 90 interviews over the course of losing the 3 jobs, so that was, I don't know, a 13-year period, something like that. So yeah, I really went through a lot trying to, get my feet back on the ground.
So there's no number, for some people, it's as easy as they put one application in and they're going to get the job. For that other somebody like Noel, who struggled to, putting all these things through, it was challenging by all means, but he was faithful, and he just kept one step, and the other thing I think you were really good at was looking at different fields. So he went from like computer-based things to teaching to a hotel front desk to now he's at the blood bank in a lab. And this job now actually suits him, I think, the best.
Mm-hmm.
So personality-wise and skill set. So through all of that, I think then he's been able to learn who he is and what he's really good at too.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good.
And sometimes you have to go through all the things you don't like or don't do or didn't work for you, or whatever situation, and you just got to keep trying something different.
Yeah.
It's so true. It is so true. But I'm going to be honest, I'm still stuck on, you said 700 applications. Is that what you said?
700 applications, 90 job interviews. Yeah. And interviewing it's exhausting. Here's the other thing for those people that are looking for a job, understand that it is exhausting for them. It's a full-time job to find a job. And so if somebody's like, oh, you must have all the time in the world on your hands, they are cranking it on the computer applications online are not easy or simple or quick anymore.
No.
It's exhausting.
How did you keep track of 700 applications? Were you just like apply, 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 apply? You're like eating, apply, apply, drinking, apply, eating. Like, oh my gosh.
Well, you have to be organized and keep track of the places you apply to, because you don't want to apply to the same position a second time. So you have to know, where you're applying to. So I kept a spreadsheet of all the different places I applied to, and then different places I had the interviews at. And sometimes you have an interview, maybe just a phone interview, and you don't get called in for an in-person interview. Or other times you get a phone interview, in-person interview, they bring you back for a second interview or a third interview. I know there was one company I think I interviewed to the third or fourth round, and I got that far, and then they decided to hire somebody else. So that was a story I shared in my book as well, that it can be very frustrating to get that far and not be selected. So sometimes you just don't know from the company's viewpoint what they're really looking for. You just have to keep plugging away.
And one of the things I like to share is, even when I got my current job, not the current position, but at the organization, one day I asked my boss, I was like, why did you guys choose me? And she was like, well, to be honest, you both on paper had the same qualifications. You both could do the job. You both were very capable. It had nothing to do with the ability. She was just like, your personality just fit in better with the team. And so we chose you based on your personality. Now, had the team had a different personality, I wouldn't be at the organization. And so I try to tell people that, to remind them that, like, if you don't get it, like, don't be down on yourself, like, don't beat yourself up, because it could just be a matter of not the right fit. It has nothing to do with your skill set or how great you are, or like you're lacking anything, but it's, are you the right fit to the puzzle? And quite frankly, you don't want to be where you don't fit, but there's nothing worse than being somewhere where now you have a job and like you have to use your insurance because you're getting headaches because you're so stressed and you hate your job when you go in every day. Noel, let me ask you this. Have you ever emailed or reached out to an employer that you didn't get the job and asked them for feedback in terms of what maybe you could have done differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did try that a few times. I asked the company why, well, not necessarily why I wasn't hired, but what I can do better next time I go on an interview with somebody else. What can I improve upon? And due to privacy concerns, companies usually can't give you a reason why they didn't hire you. They'll just say maybe the other person had more years experience. But that was still helpful to hear that, because then I knew that someone had 10 more years experience than I did for this position. So it wasn't, like you said before, it wasn't anything that I did wrong or because of my skill set. It was just the fact that they were more experienced in the field than I was. So that made me feel better, just hearing something simple like that as an answer.
That was fewer and farther between, though. That was not a common occurrence to be able to get feedback.
Yes, true.
So I think companies don't want to get sued.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But the cool thing is you can always ask and just kind of see what happens. Nice.
I think you got some really good feedback from your job coach, and then also at our public libraries, there was a job club, and I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Sure, yeah. So I met with a career coach, and it was very helpful to do mock interviewing with her, because like I said, Nicole, I had all these interviews and I just wasn't getting an offer. So I felt like I was doing something wrong in the interview then. So to meet with the career coach and do some practice interview questions and how I answered them she would explain to me, well, no, that's not the right way to answer that particular question. This would be a better way to answer it. And smile is very important during an interview. Some simple things like that I improved on, and it was just so helpful to do the mock interviewing, and I felt so much more confident when I went on the next interview afterwards.
That's okay. We're learning it right here, folks. We're getting tips today. Loving it. In your careers, what has been really like either the nicest piece of feedback that you received, or just something that wasn't necessarily negative, but it was like maybe even good, and it really is something that just stuck with you forever and really still affects how you operate and how you work today?
Well, it's interesting. This feedback came, so at the museum where I was, my boss said to me at a review, she said, Angela, and I'd been there 11 years. She's like, Angela, you've kind of hit where you need to be. She's like, I think you're getting bored. And I was like, huh, I just hadn't realized that about myself. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I think she might be right. Not that you have to move anywhere, but I am a person that I like to start things. I like to engage in things. I like a good challenge. I like thinking outside the box. I like solving problems. I like those kinds of things. And after she had said, it might be time to start looking for something else. Not we're kicking you out, but for your own personal and professional growth, it might be time for you to try something different. Just a thought, and that was really valuable for me to realize. If she hadn't said that, I don't know, maybe I'd still be there. But now I'm at the blood bank, and there were volunteers when I came, but there were a few at each of the places, and there hadn't been any volunteer manager leader officially for several years. And so really, I literally walked into an empty office. I didn't know how many volunteers there were. I didn't know their names. I didn't have any records. So it was a puzzlement to put all that together. But that's what I was looking for, and that makes me excited and thrive and drive. And so so for me, that was definitely some really good feedback and an observation from somebody that I would not have necessarily thought of myself right away at that moment.
That is, but I mean, kudos. Talk about an amazing leader. Like, that takes guts, right? To be like, she's amazing. I don't want to lose her. So I'm never going to tell her that she could really be bigger and greater than this. But for her to put her selfish, like, wishes aside and really looking out for your best interest, man, that is
amazing. It was, yeah. She's an amazing person. So yeah.
That is phenomenal. That is phenomenal. Wow. Wow, that's great. Noel, what about for you?
Well, at one point in my career, I was teaching business classes at a job placement center for at-risk students who are trying to improve themselves. And so every year they nominate an employee for the Educator of the Year award. And so one year, I was nominated, and I won the award for the Educator of the Year. And so there was some feedback from my colleagues on the reasons why they nominated me, and it just really meant a lot to me to see that positiveness from my colleagues, especially since I mentioned earlier, I had all these interviews. So at one point in my job hunt, I had 24 interviews for a teaching position, and I wasn't getting an offer. And so when I got recognized for this award, it just really meant so much to me to be recognized by my colleagues after coming so far from not being able to get a teaching job to teaching these kids that really wanted to better themselves, and to have that positiveness from my colleagues as well.
That's phenomenal. I mean, wow. So that probably is the answer to my next question, but it may not be, which would be, what is in your, either your personal life or professional life, either the greatest accomplishment that you've made that you are the most proud of?
Wow, that's a good question. That's a deep question, right?
Well, for me, like I said, I was working at this job placement center. So we're trying to get kids that dropped out of school to not only earn their high school diploma or GED, and they also get a certification in the different job field they're studying, but to also get employed in entry-level positions. So one time, Angela and I were out at the Home Depot, and I saw one of my former students working there, and that just really meant so much to me to see them in a position like that after dropping out of school, and then here they are working, and I was really proud of myself and proud of them to come so far as well.
That's the best, because a lot of times with what we do, you don't really see the residual, you don't see like the result of like the lives that you change. So to be able to be walking through the store and see that, man, that had to have been amazing. I could just imagine like, oh, yes, okay, I have purpose and meaning in life, and I'm gonna keep going forward. I love it.
Absolutely. And I think mine kind of goes a little bit that with the relationships. It's it's doing enough the tasks that I need to do, and organizing things and doing what I need to do behind the scenes so that relationships can happen, and influencing people in that way. In the volunteer world, creating a space and an environment where volunteer, and this actually just happened today. I have volunteer leaders who are in charge of other volunteers now at their different blood centers. And I just had a meeting with the three of them. And the one of them said, I've been here for 5 years or whatever it was. And she said, Angela, the volunteer program is so much more organized because there wasn't anybody. So it's not a diss on anybody else. It was a vacuum. And so she said, what's happening because of the structure and the order, she said the new volunteers coming in understand they're not searching for information. They're not seeking. It's not like, what am I doing? I'm in the dark. I want to help, but what do I do? She said it's really building community. And I didn't even realize that was going to be a byproduct of trying to put in best practices of what I know is supposed to be good for volunteer programs, right? I didn't even know that would be a byproduct, but and I was just like, oh my gosh, really? And so that was really encouraging to me to go, wow, all of this hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, and frustration, and the what, right? Sometimes really makes it worthwhile when and I've been here I've been at the blood bank 2 years. And so, it's like, okay, things are starting to come to fruition. Things are starting to pay off. And so, again, it's that step by step by step by step. I guess kind of a theme, right? Is walk by faith, one step at a time. And I think especially in 2020, that's especially all we can really do right now is, usually I'm a big planner, and I like to have like big plans, and right now it's like, you know what? I don't even have a clue what's going to happen next week. So I don't know. We're just going to take a step at a time. I have a general direction of where I want to go. And, I'm there we are. That's all I can kind of go with right now.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Love, love, love it. Now to one of my favorite parts of the show. So I'm going to ask you a question from this book. 3,000 questions about me. Well, us, I guess. So you're going to choose a number 1 through 3,000, and then I'm going to ask you the question. And if you don't like the question, we can change it.
Okay.
So choose your number.
74.
Okay. Let's see. Ha! Okay, I love it. Ha! Okay.
Are we going to love it? That's the question.
I don't know. So the question is, have you ever assembled furniture by yourself?
Oh my gosh. So can I change that to a greenhouse? So we I put the door on today of this greenhouse that looked like a gazillion pieces that came in 6 boxes. And it was like an erector set for anybody that remembers erector sets, right? Or Lincoln Logs or Legos or I don't know. Tinker Toys. It was more like Tinker Toys. More like Tinker Toys. Lots of pipes, lots of connections. So yes, frustrating, but rewarding. Tonight, finally, I'm like, okay, the door's on. I think it's okay now.
So Noel, were you helping? Was this like a together project, or were you like, yeah, that's all yours?
Partly.
That's a great question, Nicole. I was still working on sewing up the pieces from the old greenhouse that was torn down. And while I was doing that, next thing you know, the new one's already up.
Good answer. Good answer. So first of all, yes, I have done it. I detest it. I stay out of IKEA for that exact reason. I'm just like, no. But this past weekend, I'm kind of excited because my fiance just bought a house, and we're like renovating stuff and cleaning it up and making it all pretty and just getting everything ready to be moved into. And I mean, it wasn't a greenhouse, but it was a little bench. And I got to use power tools. Cool. That was cool.
Yay.
Yeah. So it took all of 10 minutes. I might have to take a picture, and I tell you, it's no greenhouse, but I'm proud.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Any little project, it's that accomplishment. It feels so good to actually make something yourself and go, wow, it works. It didn't fall apart.
Yeah, well, especially after I sat on it and I did it. And I was like, all right, we're good. But I mean, and there was this sense of accomplishment, but not enough to make me want to do it again. Angela, Noel, thank you both so much for joining me and being a guest on here and sharing and being vulnerable. Everybody, don't forget about, where is it? There it is. Job Loss Applesauce. Right here by Noel Williamson. Do you want to tell them how they can either reach you or where they can find the book, that whole kind of thing?
Oh, sure. I self-published it, and it's on Amazon. So you just go on Amazon and type in Job Loss Applesauce, and you'll find my book there. And yes, I'm on Facebook. I have a page for my book as well, Job Loss Applesauce. You can find that page on Facebook. And I once in a while post some encouraging stories that relate to job loss on there. And you can send me an email. My email address is in the book as well. So any feedback would be really appreciative, just like we were talking about during the session tonight. So that would be wonderful to hear feedback. Yeah.
But I love it. Angela, I know you are up at the blood bank. If anybody wants to reach out to you, how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely, the blood bank at Delmarva, and you look under volunteer and you'll find me, A. Williamson, S-O-N, at bbd.org.
And for our guests who are listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of From the Suggestion Box, navigating feedback, the good, the bad, and the say what? Not letting the good stuff go to your head and the bad stuff go to your heart. So we will see you next time. Make sure you subscribe. Bye-bye.